Every day, thousands of ships worldwide intentionally take in and discharge millions of tons of seawater. From the outside, it looks like the vessel has sprung a serious leak. However, the reality is much more fascinating. Sometimes the water pouring from the hull saves the massive ship from losing its balance. Other times, it cools down engines powerful enough to run a small power plant. And occasionally, it's this very stream of water that gives the crew their first clue of a serious malfunction on board. To an observer on shore, it always looks the same. Water is simply gushing out of the ship. But in reality, there are dozens of reasons, and some can save the vessel, while others could trigger a catastrophe. So, where does all this water inside the steel hull come from? And how can experienced sailors tell that something is wrong with the ship just by looking at a single stream of water? Roughly 80% of all global cargo is currently transported by colossal ocean-going vessels, but there's a rather bizarre paradox in this planetary logistics network. Due to trade imbalances between continents, nearly a third of all container ships have to cross the ocean completely empty. For instance, Asian factories endlessly ship millions of containers filled with electronics, clothing, and machinery worldwide. Yet, they bring back virtually no real cargo to their home ports. People unfamiliar with maritime affairs often believe a popular myth that an entirely empty ship is perfectly safe. According to this theory, a lighter vessel glides faster over the waves and saves a ton of expensive fuel, but this assumption is false and incredibly far from the truth. The stability of any floating object always relies on two invisible points. The first is the center of gravity, where the entire weight of the steel structure presses down. The second is the center of buoyancy, where the upward force of the water pushes against the hull from below. When a properly loaded ship tilts slightly due to wind or waves, the center of buoyancy shifts toward the tilt. It instantly creates a powerful restoring force and quickly pushes the hull back upright. But if you completely unload thousands of tons of cargo, this delicate working balance is destroyed. The hull floats much too high above the waterline, and its center of gravity dangerously shifts upward. The ship transforms into an extremely unstable and perilous structure. Any unpredictable rogue wave or sudden gust of wind can cause the hull to list. Because the center of gravity is too high, the necessary restoring moment simply isn't generated. The vulnerable ship completely loses its ability to self-right, begins rocking relentlessly, and risks capsizing in a matter of seconds. To outsmart the laws of physics, engineers came up with an elegant and simple solution. Before heading out into the open ocean, massive pumps suck in hundreds of tons of ordinary seawater. It floods into the lowest internal tanks, pulling the center of gravity closer to the keel, making the empty ship controllable once again. But what happens if you try to replace liquid ballast with a simple solid weight, or make a miscalculation while pumping it? This is exactly where the dangerous line is drawn, the point where a ship can lose its balance mid-voyage. At first glance, it might seem easy to solve the empty ship problem once and for all. Just lay steel plates, concrete blocks, or plain rocks at the very bottom of the cargo holds. In ancient times, sailors did exactly that, but this method is completely useless for today's giants. A ship constantly changes its mass while underway. Powerful engines continuously burn hundreds of tons of heavy fuel oil. As a result, the total weight drops, and the center of gravity slowly creeps upward again. Solid cargo in the holds cannot adapt to these changes. Furthermore, you can't quickly toss boulders or cast iron overboard. If you stack containers on top of such a permanent weight, the ship becomes too heavy. It will sit too deep in the water and simply won't be able to leave a shallow harbor. The real disaster strikes when the crew miscalculates the weight. If the center of gravity is lowered too much, the ship will snap back to an upright position with ferocious force and terrifying speed. This exact physics phenomenon caused the disaster of the massive container ship One Apus. In 2020, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, it was caught in a brutal storm. The ship experienced parametric resonance, a highly dangerous event where the rhythm of the ocean waves synchronizes with the vessel's own natural rolling frequency. A violent side-to-side rocking began. The enormous ship was violently thrown from side to side with such force that the heavy-duty steel lashings failed. As a result, the raging sea washed nearly 2,000 containers overboard. Another terrifying incident happened to the car carrier Cougar Ace near Alaska. It was transporting around 5,000 brand new cars. While in open waters, the crew began a ballast exchange but failed to follow the strict sequence of emptying and filling the tanks. A sloshing mass of water formed inside the half-empty reservoirs, causing a critical list. The giant car carrier instantly lost its stability and rolled onto its side in seconds. This is why ships absolutely need dynamic weight. Ordinary water is perfectly suited for this role. It can be pumped into the required part of the hull in minutes, transferred from one side to the other, or entirely discharged into the ocean. However, protecting the ship from capsizing is only half the job. If the water is loaded incorrectly, it won't just tilt the vessel, it can literally snap the iron hull in two. A colossal steel ship might seem completely monolithic and indestructible, like a solid block of metal. There's a beautiful myth floating around the internet that such a behemoth can only be destroyed by a horrific hurricane, a fatal breach, or crashing into a cliff. But that's a total misconception. In reality, the hull of any ship constantly flexes and bends on the waves like a long plastic ruler. And incorrectly pumped water in a tank can destroy it completely while it's resting peacefully in a calm bay. Ballast water isn't just needed to keep the ship from tipping sideways. It must be perfectly balanced from the bow all the way to the stern. Imagine pumping tons of water solely into the nose and the tail, leaving the middle empty. The ends of the ship will immediately pull it down, while the light center will thrust upward. The metal will be subjected to colossal stress. If you do the opposite and load all the weight right in the middle, the belly will sag. The bow and stern will shoot up toward the sky, and the ship will arch like a frightened cat. It's even worse if you mix up the tanks diagonally. That unleashes a savage twisting force on the hull, trying to wrench the thick steel in opposite directions. One wrong move by the officer at the pump control panel, and invisible cracks will spiderweb across the hull plating. A second later, the 1,000-ton Titan will simply snap in half with a deafening crack. But this dense water has another hidden function that hardly anyone knows about. If you unload all the cargo from the holds, the stern of the empty Leviathan will rise high above the waves. Because of this, the massive propeller and the heavy rudder will be half exposed. The propeller will start chopping empty air, whipping up foam like a giant kitchen blender. The engine roars, the ship goes nowhere, and the violent vibration literally tears machinery from its mountings. Even the lightened bow of the ship becomes a helpless target in this state. On the very first steep wave, the front end flies upward, only to slam its flat bottom against the surface with tremendous force. This phenomenon is called slamming. The power of each impact is comparable to smashing a steel bucket with a sledgehammer. To avoid crushing the bottom and to keep the propeller submerged deep in the water, the pumps draw in thousands of tons of ocean water, firmly pressing the ship down into the abyss. Looking at the smooth steel sides of a massive ship, it's hard to imagine that inside it resembles an endless multi-level labyrinth. Hidden beneath the decks and along the sides is an entire system of isolated compartments, connected by miles of sturdy pipes and powerful pumps. This is the so-called double bottom and double hull. There is an empty space between the outer skin touching the ocean and the inner bottom plating. It's exactly these invisible voids that sailors flood with hundreds of tons of seawater. Ultra-powerful pumps can transfer liquid from one end of the ship to the other in minutes, like pumping blood through a giant organism. On different classes of ships, this hydraulic system is designed completely differently, because every giant has its own specific mission. Take bulk carriers, for example, which transport coal, ore, or grain. Their ballast tanks are sloped and positioned in the uppermost and lowermost corners of the cargo holds. This is designed with clever precision. When the top corner tanks are emptied, the loose cargo naturally slides down to the bottom during unloading, like going down an ice slide. And the sloped lower tanks not only maintain balance, but also shield the hull from the monstrous impacts of multi-ton clamshell buckets grabbing the ore. It's a completely different story on container ships. Their walls consist of a double steel shield, concealing vertical water-filled compartments inside. There is a common myth that double hulls were introduced solely out of concern for nature and to prevent oil spills. But that's only part of the truth. On cellular ships, double hulls solve a crucial engineering problem. They provide rigidity to the massive open hull, which would otherwise twist on the waves, and simultaneously protect the holds from accidental bumps in port. But the ballast automation demonstrates the most phenomenal, almost sniper-like precision on warships. On state-of-the-art aircraft carriers and cruisers, fluid redistribution happens at incredible speeds. When a giant aircraft carrier executes a combat turn, its heavy hull banks critically. The system instantly pumps tens of tons of liquid mass to the opposite side to level the flight deck. During aircraft launches, or the exact second a multi-ton fighter jet snags the arresting gear cables at high speed, the sudden load is instantly compensated for by the ballast pumps. This allows naval vessels to maintain flawless stability and accuracy under the harshest conditions. All these ingenious hidden pipelines and smart pumps turn ordinary seawater into a compliant instrument of protection. Without this invisible engineering circulatory system, not a single maritime giant could sail even a couple of miles. Picture this scenario. A massive bulk carrier takes in 1,000 tons of water somewhere off the coast of Asia, crosses the entire ocean, and discharges it off the coast of America. You might think, what's the big deal? Water is the same everywhere, salty. However, along with this moisture, billions of tiny passengers travel in those dark, enclosed tanks. Small crustaceans, alien mollusks, voracious fish larvae, and harmful bacteria hitch a ride to the other side of the world completely free of charge. Upon entering a fresh environment, these invaders trigger a genuine ecological catastrophe. With no natural predators in their new home, they multiply at a staggering rate, devour local wildlife, and clog port water intakes with their colonies. There was an episode in history when a tiny comb jelly, brought over with ballast water from the Atlantic, caused catastrophic damage to the entire fishing industry in the Black Sea. For a long time, it was believed that sea salt alone would kill all microbes in the tanks if kept sealed for a few weeks. But this was a fatal misconception. Many microorganisms easily survive in total darkness for months and only become more aggressive. This is precisely why global regulations strictly ban the discharge of untreated water in foreign harbors. Nowadays, every ship has been turned into a floating decontamination plant. Before the seawater is released from the holds, it goes through a rigorous three-stage purification process. First, heavy-duty filters trap large debris, sand, silt, and small shells. Then, chemistry steps in. Oxidizing agents are mixed into the flow, or the water is saturated with ozone, burning out all microflora on a molecular level. In the final stage, the liquid is pumped through immensely powerful ultraviolet systems. This isn't just a soft glow. It's total sterilization of the environment at a cellular level. UV light simply destroys the DNA of small organisms, rendering them completely harmless. Only after such deep treatment does the powerful pump discharge the clean water into the ocean. Thanks to this method, ships no longer spread dangerous alien pests across the global ocean. But what happens when the filling mechanism operates not to save the ship from storms, but to intentionally sink a massive object straight to the bottom? Regular cargo ships are far from the only behemoths whose fate relies entirely on managing heavy water. Out in the open sea, there are structures whose ballast hydraulics serve as the only barrier between normal operation and disaster. Take semi-submersible oil rigs, for instance. These aren't just platforms, they are colossal steel islands resting on massive underwater pontoons. To prevent such a leviathan from bobbing on the waves like a cork, its pontoons are intentionally flooded with water. The rig sinks deep down, hiding from the raging elements in the calm depths of the ocean. But this technology requires astonishing precision. A famous incident occurred on the Noble Pole Wolf drilling rig, where a failure of just a single valve allowed fluid to flood uncontrollably into the port compartments. The massive structure began listing rapidly right in front of the shocked crew. It took mere moments and the icy composure of the engineers to manually shut the pipes and save the rig from an irreversible collapse. But where water management is elevated to a true art form is on submarines. Many people think a submarine dives purely because of its powerful horizontal dive planes cutting into the water while moving. But that's a ridiculous misconception. Without ballast, not a single submarine on the planet could submerge even a foot. A sub's design resembles a Russian nesting doll. Between the strong inner pressure hull, where the crew lives, and the thin outer casing, lie the giant main ballast tanks. On the surface, these tanks are packed to the brim with air. When the captain gives the order to dive, special vent valves burst open at the top of the tanks. The air rushes out with a howl, and heavy seawater instantly surges into the hull from below through open flood ports. The sub loses buoyancy and drops like a stone into the depths. To hover flawlessly at a specific depth and avoid plunging into the dark abyss, sailors use small trim tanks. They take in just a few hundred extra gallons of water for pinpoint balance. And when a submarine needs to surface in an emergency, highly pressurized air from the tanks kicks in. With a roar, it forces the water out of the tanks through the bottom openings. The vessel instantly becomes light and pops to the surface like a cork. And that is how ordinary seawater, gushing from the side of a ship, turns out to be the ultimate protector of all ocean routes. Every stream pouring from the steel belly above the harbor waters conceals highly complex physics that keeps a 1,000-ton vessel afloat. Without these continuous flows, not a single cargo giant could survive the colossal power of ocean storms and deliver its containers to their destination. There's a false belief that modern ships are so smart and autonomous that the ballast system functions entirely on its own and needs no supervision. But that is a risky misconception. Behind every movement of water inside the hold lies the relentless work of the captain, engineers, and watch officers. A miscalculation of just a couple of percent or an incorrectly filled tank can result in a torn hull and multi-million-dollar losses. Cutting-edge technologies continue to evolve, making pumping mechanisms even faster, more reliable, and safer. Laser disinfection, pressure sensors mounted directly on the hull plating, and smart balance control algorithms help prevent disasters before they even happen. But the fundamental principle has remained unchanged for hundreds of years. It's the seawater that gives these steel giants their stability and strength. The next time you spot a colossal ship in port or on screen, with a powerful stream of water roaring out of its belly, you will know exactly what the secret behind it is. It's not an accident, not waste discharge, and not a random occurrence. It is the vessel's hidden water heart at work, ensuring the safety of the crew, the preservation of the cargo, and the health of the entire global ocean. The continuous thin stream of water pouring from the side of a moving ship is often not ballast discharge at all, but rather the continuous cooling of the ship's engines with seawater. But now, you know absolutely all the secrets of a ship's water heart.